If you've been in the market for a name brand webcam but you didn't want to spend too much money, the Razer Kiyo may have crossed your path at some point. At the sub $100 price range, it's aimed to compete with other more popular budget webcams like the ubiquitous c920, for example. But in 2021, how does this webcam stack up to Logitech's? Well, let's find out. Alright, so let's start with the unboxing. Upon opening the box, you get a little thank you note from Razer, some documentation with some stickers inside, and then of course you get the webcam itself. The Kiyo has a resolution of 1080p at 30 frames a second and 720p at 60 frames per second, but I'll talk a bit more about that later. It has a 1/4 inch mount if you want to attach it to a tripod. Otherwise, you can simply place it on top of a monitor like most other webcams. You can tilt the camera up or down like a lot of standard webcams, but sadly, unlike its Pro variant, there is no swivel option. The biggest highlight to this webcam is undoubtedly the built-in ring light. It turns on by default when you plug it in and can be dimmed or brightened with the turn of its built-in dial. It downloads the Razer Synapse software when you first plug it in, and it's honestly a bit underwhelming since it doesn't go into too much depth in terms of the tweaks that you can make. You have some basic controls and some presets you can apply, but there's not much else. If you need to make any adjustments, just do it through OBS and you'll be fine. Speaking of OBS, this is a webcam after all, so let's go ahead and put it through its paces and make some comparisons to that of the c920. All right, so we have both webcams set up in OBS. I have the Razer Kiyo right here, which is at the bottom of your screen, and then we have the Logitech c920, which is at the top. I have the c920 myself, and yeah, I basically chose this because it is probably the most popular, the most ubiquitous, whatever you want to use, for webcams out there, and it's about the same price range right now on Amazon in comparison to that of the Kiyo. I do have the Kiyo's ring light set to max right now, and I will play with the settings a little bit as we go on. I have three different settings, three different scenes set up, so we can take a look here. We have the Kiyo, and then we have the c920 in case you wanted to see these images enlarged. So, first impressions right off the bat with the Kiyo here. I think the image looks fine. It looks very similar to the c920. I wouldn't be surprised if I found out a lot of the hardware or the same hardware was used in the Kiyo that is in the c920. If I were to venture a guess, I'd probably guess that the software side of things is the most differentiating thing between these two cameras. But then again, I don't really know, to be completely honest with you. I could be totally wrong. For immediate first impressions with the Kiyo in comparison to the c920, I don't know if this will show up very well on YouTube or not. The Kiyo, right out the gate, seems to have much better colors. I think right out the gate, the colors seem much more natural. The Logitech seems to, especially with skin tones, tends to make my face a little bit pink. I'll switch over to the Logitech here. All right, so the Logitech, as you can see, it makes my skin a little pinkish, just at default settings. You know, you can tweak this a little bit in the settings on OBS and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think colors overall look just a little bit better on the Razer Kiyo. Let's go back here. And yeah, the other thing I do notice more so in a negative light with the Kiyo, and maybe it's just me, maybe we'll be able to tell better once we upload this to YouTube, obviously, but it seems that with, this way, with darker colors and that sort of thing, there's a lot of camera noise. It seems to have a much tougher time with like lower light colors or darker colors or whatever the words that I'm trying to say are. There's camera noise right around the couch, and I noticed like on the dark parts of this cabinet here, whereas the c920 seems to not have as much of a problem with that. One other thing I do want to mention too is it may seem that the Kiyo has a bit wider depth of field. It does look that way to me just by a thin margin, but again, these cameras aren't perfectly aligned with each other, so I'm going to just say that they're roughly the same. Let's go ahead and turn the ring light on this guy all the way down. So I turned it off now. The ring light is completely off. It looks fine with or without the ring light. I think the ring light is just like that extra bonus feature if you have it in a well-lit room. One thing I will say, if you have all the lights off, the ring light isn't going to do much. It's just a tiny little light, and it's just going to look like you're shining a flashlight into your face. In fact, I will be right back and quickly edit this out, I'll turn the lights off and I'll show you what I mean. All right, so, man, this looks terrible on a webcam. The lights are off. All the overhead lights, I should say, are off. This is how it would look if you had, say, 2 LEDs on the outside of your desk, because that's what I have. I have 2 LED lamps on each side of the desk right now, and that's the only light source apart from the Kiyo ring light right here. If I turn this off, you will see that they kind of perform the same. I'm just going to go ahead and take it a step further and turn these lamps off. Okay, so now everything in this room is pretty much pitch black. The only light is really coming from my computer monitor here. So if you can see with the Kiyo, there is a lot of noise going on. This is what I was talking about. A little out of focus there. Yeah, there we go. There's a lot of noise in low light. So let's turn that back up and just see how this light handles with. Okay, so now, yeah, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's just kind of the ring light. If you don't have proper lighting in your room, it's just going to seem like a big flashlight on your face, which for some people, it might not matter. And yeah, I guess this is a good segue to my next point. But yeah, as you can see, like, this is the C920. You don't get as much camera noise right here like you did with the Kiyo. You see some of it kind of right around here, right on this gray part of the cabinet. But there's far less compared to that of the Kiyo if we go back to that. And now we just get a lot. And I don't know, maybe this doesn't show up on YouTube. I hope it does, but definitely in OBS, I can clearly see this. And the autofocus especially really seems to struggle here. So even if I turn the light on here and it just looks like I'm shining this like weird light on my face and it looks really bad. But yeah, let's fix the lighting here and I'll continue to talk about these. All right, much better. Let's go back to what I was talking about before with the autofocus. The autofocus on the Kiyo is probably another weak point if I'm to compare these two webcams. You may have noticed a lot of that, like, kind of almost shaking camera, that pulsing that you see. That's the camera trying to autofocus. It does fine. I don't seem to go blurry a lot if I'm in a well-lit room, but it seems to be trying hard to focus a lot. You know, if we go back to the C920 here, the autofocus has been turned on this whole time. I have both set to default as far as settings go in OBS, and I have autofocus, auto white balance, auto exposure all on. And I think both of these webcams side by side seem to look fine as they are. They just have their kind of own pros and cons. Let's go to the C920 again. Personally, I don't like the colors as much, how the colors look compared to the Kiyo. And you know, this could be just like a sample size of one thing because it's only happened to me and I don't know other people's experiences with it. But with the Kiyo, every time I've plugged it in and I've used it, it just has worked every single time. I had no issues of it crashing or freezing or anything like that. Just in trying to record this video, I've had the Logitech webcam crash twice, and I've had to unplug it and plug it back in, or hit deactivate and activate on OBS. And I admit the C920 is an older webcam, so take that with a grain of salt. But in my personal experience, you know, if you're looking at the C920 or you're looking at the Razer Kiyo, functionality-wise, the Kiyo works. It does have its gripes. That autofocus is a little bit annoying, but you can turn that off and you can dial it in exactly to what you want. And that's what I would recommend doing if you're doing something like live streaming. If you're doing like a work call or using it for school, it doesn't really matter. That sort of thing doesn't matter. So yeah, I think that's covered everything. One last thing I wanted to mention too is some of you who may be interested in doing live streaming for gaming, you may be interested in the Kiyo because of its 60 frames per second advertised frame rate. And okay, here's the thing. It does work at 720p, but I don't recommend using this. Not because it's at 720p, because I mean, if you're streaming, as you can see on the screen here, it's so small that it doesn't really make that big of a difference. However, for me at least, when using this, and please let me know in the comments if I am wrong to anybody who might have this webcam, but from what I've gathered, the 60 frames a second thing only really works if you turn auto exposure off. And I'll just show you how that looks in a second, and it's not pretty. Okay, so I have set the Kiyo to 720p at 60 frames a second, and as you can probably tell, one is much more fluid than the other if I wave my hand or move my fingers, that sort of thing. But it's not really worth it to me, because when you turn the auto exposure off, if I were to crank the exposure anymore, it looks really bad. And if I try to turn the exposure down, it looks really bad. So, yeah, it's just, it doesn't work out that well, especially for a webcam when it's something that you kind of just want to set and forget kind of thing. You want to just plug in and play. Getting rid of auto exposure is something that's really kind of baffling, and I wouldn't really recommend doing that personally. I mean, to each their own. If this is something that you can make work, excellent. But for most people who are using a webcam, you're using it for budget and for simplicity. And personally, I just wouldn't recommend using the 60 frames a second. Stick to 1080p 30, get that higher resolution, and yeah, nobody's going to really care if your camera's at 30 frames a second. If you want 60 frames a second, just set your gameplay to 60 frames a second. That's all people really care about. All right, so we're back to 1080p 30 frames a second, and yeah, I think as far as this setting goes, both webcams are excellent right out the gate. I think the Kiyo looks fine. Again, with these webcams, make sure you're in a well-lit room, because they're just webcams after all, but the Kiyo does not seem to handle low light as well as the Logitech does. The Logitech seems to work really well. However, if for some reason with skin tones, it seems to, at least for me anyway, it makes everything just a little pinkish. But then again, with the Logitech's camera, the autofocus is just miles better than the Kiyo's. So, you know, you just kind of have to decide what you like in terms of your overall visual quality. You can, of course, tweak a lot of different things in the settings in OBS. But yeah, this is basically what you get with these cameras as far as visual quality goes. Let's quickly talk about audio. All right, so this is the microphone for the Razer Kiyo. I'm about 1.5 feet away, and as you can tell, it's not very good. It's a webcam microphone. It's usually the feature on webcams that are focused on the least, because with webcams, you're trying to get the best visual quality in a small form factor. So either of these webcam microphones aren't gonna sound very good. Let's head over to the C920. All right, and this is the Logitech's built-in microphone. As you can hear, it's not very good either. Again, they're webcam microphones. You get what you get. And I don't really recommend using these if you're streaming. Just use any sort of USB mic that you can get, or a headset microphone. If you're using this for conference calls, for work, or for school, or something like that, they'll do the job fine. The Logitech's microphone is a bit more sensitive than the Kiyo's, if we switch back to that. So yeah, the Kiyo is a little less sensitive, and because of that, I kind of tend to prefer that just a little bit more. I don't like how harsh the C920 sounds by comparison to the Kiyo. That being said, they're both webcam microphones. They both sound fine for what they are. Again, this is all basically subjective opinion. But yeah, we're back to the kind of overall stream windows here, and yeah, that was the audio and the video of these webcams. I hope this was a helpful comparison for you. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. So what are my thoughts overall on this webcam? By and large, I think the Razer Kiyo is a perfectly fine webcam, especially for its price point. I mean, it's not perfect by any means, don't get me wrong. It definitely has its gripes, as I've mentioned. I do think the built-in ring light is a nice feature, but basically, if you just need a good 1080p 30 frames a second video signal, then yeah, this webcam will do just fine. And that about does it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again, as always, for checking out this video and checking out the channel. If you like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, as it is a great way to help a small channel like us get seen by the YouTube algorithm. And if you like this type of content and want to see more like it, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell icon to stay up to date on everything that we're doing. We upload new videos every Monday and Saturday, and live stream every Wednesday night, usually around 9 p.m. Central Time. And if you have any questions about the Razer Kiyo or the Logitech C920, I'll be happy to answer anything that I can in the comments down below. But that's about enough rambling out of me. Thank you again so much for watching. My name is Blake, and for all things tech, games, movies, to anything nerdy in between, be sure to subscribe to Digital Cynics. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you next time.